Let's get after it. There you go.
My friend.
What's going on, Coach? Look at you.
Well, it's going downhill from here, baby.
All right, let's get going.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the Gold Medal Excellence Podcast. I'm your host, AJ Payne. And today on the program, we're joined by Coach Gary Wilson. Coach Wilson, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, AJ. And Chris.
Thanks. Yeah. Hey, thanks for coming on. Coach, I haven't talked to you or seen you in a while, but it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, well, they don't let me out of the state very much.
All right, so I'm gonna start from All right, so I'm gonna start from the very beginning. Talk about what it was like growing up and what your early playing career was like.
Well, I grew up on a farm in upstate New York, and there was only 5,000 people in our whole county, and I think there's like 40,000 now. So, but that's how I grew up, and I went to Cortland State in upstate New York, which is a really good physical education coaching school. And after I graduated, believe it or not, I did graduate from college. I know that's hard to believe. Chris will tell you that. And then I started coaching at a little high school called Hannibal, which is up north of Syracuse, about 20 miles, and town of 600 people. And I was varsity basketball coach, cross country, track and field, athletic director, recreation director in the community. He did everything. And so, that's how I got started. It was a great starting job because you had to, I built my own track, made it out of railroad ties for curbing, and it was a grass track. And for a while we ran around the baseball field. It was like a bomb went off.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Crazy. It was crazy. My superintendent, he always wanted to fire me. He's always going, we have to decide who the boss is here. I said, okay, it's me. And he was like, I'm sure I put him in an early grave. But then, the interesting part of my journey, I was married to my first wife when I was there. And after I was at Hannibal for 6 years. And after 6 years, I quit. And hitchhiked. We got a divorce, and I went with a buddy of mine. We hitchhiked all over the country. We went to Florida from New York, over to California, flew to Hawaii, lived in Hawaii, worked. I was a waiter at a restaurant, worked in the a rental car place, did all kinds of stuff. And we were trying to go around the world, but of course that was right. Vietnam was just ending, and so they weren't letting anybody. Like, we wanted to go to Australia first, and they said, that's fine, but if you got a ticket in, you also have to have a ticket out. I said, I haven't even got money for the ticket in, let alone the ticket out. And so we ended up just going back. We flew back to LA, and then hitchhiked back across the country to back to New York. And then I got a 1 semester job at I took over for a guy who was getting his doctorate. So they always hired just interim guys. And so I coached at Westchester State, Pennsylvania, and taught. And then there was a job open in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Well, one of my buddies said, hey, there's a job open in La Crosse. And I said, I'm a track coach. I'm not a lacrosse coach. He goes, no, stupid. La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm going, what? Where is that? Well, it's in La Crosse, Wisconsin. But and that was another one-year job that turned into a 2-year job. But then I said, I'm coming back east. Well, I met Susie, my second wife, and believe it or not, she stayed with me for 47 years, which is I would have left me a long time ago. I was going, oh my Lord. But anyway, so I coached men's track for those 2 years, and then taught student teachers. And then when that 2 years was up, they said, well, you can stay and teach, but you're going to have to either coach women's cross country or women's track. I said, I'm not coaching women. Are you nuts? I said, this is not a good idea for me. But I started coaching cross country, and then I went back to coaching men's track too, and then I coached women's track, and I love coaching the women. It was phenomenal. So, so that's kind of that was the journey until I came to Minnesota. So yeah, I was at lacrosse for 10 years. So it was a good run.
As long as I've known you, I didn't even know that. It seems like lacrosse, Wisconsin lacrosse. That's like the for people who don't know, they're Division III, but I think it's you. And then who's the other guy who was there for years and won all the national titles, and he went to Wisconsin?
Mark Guthrie.
Mark Guthrie, yeah. It's like that's the springboard to the Big Ten, the Big 20, the Big 20.
You're right. I mean, I told something. In fact, I told somebody this the other day. I was talking to him. I said, we got more kids by accident than we ever got on purpose recruiting.
Yeah.
Great town, beautiful area, great, great tradition. Buck Jones, who was there at not the very beginning, but he was there before me, and Phil Eston. And so it was, you'd have to be a real idiot to screw that up. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And of course, I started coaching women in '77, and that was kind of a, with Title IX just being enacted, and
yeah,
it was interesting. But I think on the women's team we had 8 or 9 kids when I first started, and we always had, after that, we always had 50, 60, 70 kids on our cross country team. Yeah, we had 125 kids on women's track, and another 125 on men's track. So it was like 250 kids. It was nuts. It was like, yeah.
That's and that's Division III. So let me ask you, how many students went to Wisconsin Crosse?
I think
Division III schools are small on the smaller side, right?
Yeah, it was like, I think when I came, there were like 5,000 or 6,000, and there might be 8,000 or 9,000 now, but that whole
Wisconsin, you had a 5,000.
What's that?
If you had a 5,000 student enrollment, you had 200. You had 200 to 300 of them, on the track and cross country team. That's like you're an asset for the school. I always tell people that, like in Division III, if you're a coach and you got large teams, you're bringing in a lot of tuition. You're an asset.
But you know what? It was so, Chris, it was so cheap to go there. It was like, I think, now this is back in the day, of course, but when I started, I think the total tuition fees, books, everything was $1,500.
Wow.
And it hasn't really, I mean, it's gone up obviously, but you can still go to any of those Wisconsin schools for 14,000, 15,000. So wow. Yeah, it's pretty it's
affordable.
Affordable, yeah. Inexpensive. So, but it's a great system, it's a great, and they got a brand new facility there, and they've done a nice job with everything, coaches and kids, and yeah, it's a good place.
Mm-hmm. Talk about the difference between coaching women and men.
Well, if I was going to write a book, it'd be like one page, one chapter. No matter how good looking, wonderful, beautiful, intelligent, awesome a woman is, they think they're a piece of crap. And men, no matter how idiot, they all think they're Brad Pitt, they're the smartest guy on the planet. They're wonderful. And so you're always trying to tell the men, you're idiots. And they go, well, we know we're idiots, but we're in charge. I said, no, you're not in charge. The women are in charge. You just don't know it yet. And but so you just have to really pump up the women, even to this day. I mean, they just I love coaching women, but it's every day it's a challenge of, listen, you're a great person, you're smart, you're intelligent, but they just have this, I don't know. They're obviously getting better, but their self-image is just like, oh well, I'm not worthy. What's the matter with you? I said, look at the men run the world right now, and it looks they've screwed it up pretty bad. So so let's get you in there and be intelligent and be assertive, and they're starting to, but it's a challenge. I mean, everything else is, AJ, everything else is a level playing field. I mean, obviously physiologically they're not as strong, or whatever, but they're tough people. But I'd rather the women will give you everything they got. They'll just they might stab each other in the back sometimes, but they won't come at you, right? Like me, I'm an upstate New Yorker, so I'm like, no, we're not doing it. We're not doing it this way. And the guys will fight each other, so they're crazy. but the women just are, I mean, there's times when they're tougher. I had a kid on my team at lacrosse, Carol Howard, just now passed away, but one day in the field house, we had 250 kids working out. And all of a sudden I hear this big commotion down the other end of the track, and Carol Howard is on top of a guy punching his lights out because he was in her lane. She said, no, this is my lane. I went, Howie, you can't hit this guy. Don't leave a mark, please. So it just depends. It's fun. Kids are kids. They're kids. They're great. They're awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that you're true. We interviewed John Elders. He said the same thing. You know what I learned? Kids are kids.
Kids are
But
kids.
yeah, no, coaching the women are great, phenomenal. Like you said, sometimes you got to pump them up a little more, no matter how great they are. It's like, I'm not good enough, And like you said, the guys, I would have guys, Coach, I got to do this, man. I'm about to win.
I know.
Lift weights. And Coach, I don't need to lift weights. I had a guy that went to the Olympic trials, and he was like school record holder and 20.3. And he'd be the first guy sneaking out the weight room. Coach, I don't need to lift.
Yeah. What? Don't bother me with the details, right?
Yeah. I just show up and do it.
Yeah. Because I'm a guy. I'm great. No, you're an idiot.
Yeah. The same guy now he sees me, Coach, you're gonna hate this. Now I lift weights.
Exactly. Oh my God, yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
So talk about your championship seasons and your favorite years at lacrosse.
Well, I was when you sent that to me, I don't know if I had a favorite year. I mean, when I first started, I mean, the first meet I went to as the head track coach, we won the conference title. So it was like, oh wow, you won a conference title. Well, I didn't, the kids did. And number two, everything had been established. My job was just to, keep things going and recruit and help. So, but the lacrosse years, because I taught student teachers, and we had in physical education, we had about, we had 200 PE majors a year. And so from that standpoint of teaching and coaching those kids was awesome. We put all those kids out into the field, and I supervised student teachers. And we had a great team there's 4 of us that taught in the student teaching program. And we were together, we stayed together for the whole 10 years I was there. And so that experience, coupled with the coaching, it was just a big family. I mean, that's something Susie and I talked about when we moved up here. My assistant coach was, Lynn Anderson lived 50 miles from there. Well, you didn't get together at lacrosse. Everybody got together on the weekends. I'll tell you. No, I'll put it up here. It doesn't matter. So when I tell this story all the time, when I was at lacrosse, we had, as I said, 250 kids on the teams. Okay, and I was the director for a couple, 3 of those years. And we used to have a track party after every conference meeting. We'd have a track party. Okay, 250 kids would come to a house. Now you could drink when you're 18, and the coaches drank with the kids. I mean, it was like we'd have been, if there were cell phones, we'd all been fired. I mean, yeah. Oh my God, it was like crazy. And I used to take roll at midnight. I said, okay. And I go through everybody's name. I said, okay, is Tommy Jones here? No, what? Okay, next on Monday, you got to run laps for not being at the track party. It was absolutely nuts. But those kids to this day are friends of mine. I mean, they're in their 60s, 70s, you know. So
yeah, what was the success like there, Coach? Obviously, I know when Guthrie was there and stuff. Were you guys in a conference? How highly ranked were you guys indoor, outdoor, cross country? I mean, I'm sure you obviously had some great years there. But
yeah, we had
time period.
We did well. Guthrie really had it going with track and field. I don't know. Yeah. He won many titles.
He won a lot of national titles.
A lot of national titles. Yeah, we won cross country title in cross country in I don't know 83, and we were always top 2 or 3. And then in track, we won the national title in let's see, 22, 23, or 82, 83, and 84. And then they hired a new coach, and he was more of a teacher and wasn't a big recruiter, and so they waned for a while. But with the women's program, Pat Healy took over. Oh, I don't know, must have been late 80s, early 90s, and then they won a couple national titles, and now the new coach they've won a couple. And but the men's program for a while was just like they were a juggernaut. So yeah, unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, we had great success, but as you know, Chris, if you have good athletes, good kids,
yeah,
then you know good people. All you got to do is basically steer the ship, and you know. Yep. And not mess them up, you know.
Yeah.
But you gotta have discipline. I mean, you gotta have. I remember Billy Patza, who was a really good triple jumper for us at the Division III level. He won the triple jump at the Drake Relays. Was drinking in the van on the way back from Drake, and I caught him, and I kicked him off the team. This is the week before the conference meeting, and he and 2 of his other kid buddies. They were all captains of the team. I said, what were you guys doing? I said, no, not blah, blah, blah. I said, you guys are done. You guys are not going to the conference meeting. And they said, well, if you don't go, if we don't go, then these other 40 guys are going to not go either. I said, that's fine. I said, we got 125 guys on this team. I'll take the next 40. And so they went, well, you don't understand. I said, no, I understand perfectly. And so we kicked them off, and then they ended up going to the meet and cheering, and everybody, of course, decided that maybe that was stupid for them not to go. And we still won the conference title by 30 points, and we kicked off basically 60 points that week before. I said, no, you can't be dumb. Don't do stupid things.
Yeah.
But you know, well, you know the drill. You know?
Absolutely. And they showed up. You learn and you still won. It's taught a learnable lesson. Hey, I'm not as good as they won without me.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe my stuff does stink.
Very true. But Billy Patz is still one of my closest friends, and he still talks about that. Remember when you kicked me off the team? Yeah, I remember. So yeah, but
good people. Then you move on to University of Minnesota to talk about that transition.
Well,
Yeah, how'd that happen, Coach? What was the process of that? Did they come after you? Did you apply? Was it just open? Hey, no one wants this. Hey, man.
we'll take him. Nobody else. Well, the coach before, Mike Lawless, was a great guy, but he hated recruiting. And they had a pretty good little program, but he graduated a lot of kids. And the way it happened, Jan Stocker, who was the commissioner of our women's conference in the Wisconsin system, she became the assistant athletic director at Minnesota. And so when the job came open, when Mike retired, he decided to quit. She was there. Okay, so I said, well, I want to get this job. So I applied, didn't hear a thing. After about a month, I talked to Jan, who she liked me. She's the one that got me the job. And she said, well, they really want to have a female, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, okay. So I guess they interviewed a couple of people. They didn't like them. Then it opened again. I applied again. Then it became the same deal. It was another month. So this started in February. So by April, they still don't have a coach, and the committee just went, nobody fits. Well, then I called Jan again, and I said, hey, she said, don't worry, I got you covered. And she did. And said, well, I'm going to take it back to the committee. And so they interviewed me, and I got the job. And and I said to Susie, my wife, I said, now listen to me. And of course, I didn't even know what I didn't know, but I said, this is a different level. This is a different shooting match, and they're not very good, and we're just not very good. And she's quote unquote, she says, how much worse could it be than it's been at La Crosse in terms of time commitment? Well, I got the job. Her mom died. We had 3 kids under 5, and I was gone all the time. I mean, we were so bad. Us 3 and 2 fat guys could have beat our team. I was just like, oh my God. It was just like, I walked in, and of course, nobody, the team ran the show. The inmates were running the prison when I got there. And I said, no, no, we're going to do it this way. And there was only like 3 kids on the team that liked me. The other was like, this guy, he's coming in, he's telling us what to do, telling us where we're going to eat, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, this is the way it's going to be. And so the first year was terrible. Second year wasn't much better. But then the third year, we went from 9th in the Big Ten in cross country my first year to 8th the second year to 3rd the third year, and had the Big Ten champion, mostly with walk-on kids. And so, but it was always a struggle. It's cold. It's like, you call somebody from California and go, hey, what do you think about coming to Minnesota? They go, you're smoking dope, man. I'm not coming. Yeah. So, but it turned out to be great, but it was, I remember going to Rice for a meet about my 7th or 8th year there. And I talked to Victor Lopez, who's the coach. And I said, Victor, this is a struggle. He says, it takes a long time. You can turn cross country around pretty quick. It's like a basketball team. But with track, it's crazy. And so it took a long time to get track up and running. And it was tough.
Yeah, it takes a while, Coach. It's you got to, when you come in a new situation, to just coach it. Don't know. You got to get you got to get the old people out of there. You usually got a lot of old people, and they run the show. And I always tell people, misery loves company. So you got all these miserable people. Hey, this new guy's not gonna tell us what to do. Exactly. So it takes 2 or 3. It takes at least 2 recruiting cycles to get them out of there. And then you said it. Minnesota cross country, you probably be pretty good pretty fast there. Doesn't take that much. You get, takes only 5 kids, so you get 7 and you're pretty solid. But it had to be some challenges on the track side. That it just
painful.
And you had some good teams, but talk to us about getting, sprinters, hurlers, jumpers, throwers. Do you guys have an indoor facility when you started?
Yeah, we had it. Yeah, well, the first place I went when I got my job, the first place I went the first day of getting to Minnesota, August 1st, I didn't go to my office. I went to the indoor track because it was dirt,
Oh, wow.
dirt floor. Yeah, I mean they had. I used to go up there and recruit. I'm going, oh my aching back, dust and it was filthy. And they put in they were putting in a brand new indoor facility, all weather, blah blah blah. And so I went in there. I went, okay, I can stay, because I would have turned around and gone home. I said, no, we're leaving. Had a terrible outdoor track, but we survived. Had the Olympic Festival there in 1990. But yeah, the facilities weren't good. The budget was. I had 10 scholarships when everybody else had 14, and then it went to 16, and I said to my boss, I said, we can't turn this around with 10 scholarships. And so finally she relented and she gave me 6 more. But it was early. I mean, it was early, this is, in the late 70s, early 80s, all through there, until we get to about 90, the mid 90s is when there was a little more money, but you're still fighting the weather and the sprinter hurdler stuff. We really concentrated on multi events and throws. I mean, we had Lynn Anderson was my throws coach, and she did a heck of a job. But yeah, it was yeah. You could drink very heavily for a long time with that job.
Yeah, we interviewed, Strammers and Pete Dolan and John Elders and my own experiences, but you just nailed something. It's hard I tell people it's hard to make $1 out of 15 cents. When you got 10 scholarships and everybody got 16, and you're in the Big Ten, so you got Ohio State and you got Indiana, who was good back then, and I know those two stand out. Michigan.
Yeah.
And then you got 6 less scholarships. Like, you got to really hustle and grind. Like you said, you have to really develop. You have to develop where other schools can buy kids. You got to develop walk-ons.
Exactly.
Yeah. And obviously you did that in cross country. So you were good at doing that. But when you're at a financial deficit, a facility deficit, you got to really hustle and coach and grind.
Yeah. We had 4 or 5 kids on our team when I got there that were on full scholarships that had no business being on full scholarships. They were state champs or something, and a kid ran 14.5 in the hurdles. I said, well, you can't be on a full. And my boss, to her credit, Marilee Baker at the time was my boss. I said, we can't do it we've got to cut some of these kids back, but let's not cut them from full to nothing. Let's cut them to tuition fees and books, which was 67%. So we cut 5 or 6 kids, and so that picked up almost 2 scholarships just by doing that. And so, but it was, in fact, I still have the spreadsheet I said, okay, this is what you did in high school. This is what it takes to score in the Big Ten. This is, what you're doing now. And they all looked at it and went, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't be on that kind of money. Okay. And so, maybe, if you did that now, they go, no, I'm not doing anything for you, but I want 2 scholarships.
And I want NIL money. I want an NIL deal too.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Do you know who I am? I say, yeah, I know exactly who you are.
Oh my goodness.
Again, drinking heavily.
So you helped start the Griak Invitational, which is the shirt in the back of your view right there.
Yeah.
In high school and college. So talk about forming an invitational. What was that process like?
Well, when I'd always had a big invitational at lacrosse, okay, and I liked organizing those kinds of things. And so and Roy Griak, bless his soul, awesome guy, just an awesome guy. But he had no help either. He was like, I said, no, Roy, we got to do this and this and this and this. I said, let's have an invitational. So we started. I think we had 7 or 8 teams when we first started in '86. And it was called different things, the GBS Invitational, there's all kinds of different names for it. Nike at one time. And but every year it started to grow. But we had to hustle teams and ask people to come in and do stuff for them, gave them coaches gifts and etc. And then it must have been about 95, because that was 9 years later. This is a Griak story. Griak was the most humble, nicest guy in America. Exactly the opposite of me. He was just a good guy. And I said, hey, guess what, Roy? He said, what? I said, we've renamed the Invitational. He said, well, what's it called? I said, it's the Roy Griak. He said, what? He says, no, it's not the Roy Griak. I said, it's the Roy Griak now. He says, well, why? I said, because I formed a committee and we decided it's going to be in honor of you. I said, well, who's on the committee? I said, me. He goes, what? And from then on, we had a Griak bobblehead one year. We had started high school races. We just had and we spent a little more money, and the best story about the Griak, I mean, it's grown and grown and grown. When I left in 2016, it was 400 and some teams, high school and college. And David Benedict, who was our assistant boss, this must have been 2014, 15, someplace in there, kind of towards the end. He said of my tenure, he says, hey, he'd only been on campus like a month. He says, hey, tell me about the Griak. I said, well, it's happening this week, and I really haven't got time to talk to you.
I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. He says, well, I just got a couple of questions. He says, how much money do you take in for this meet? In terms of entry fees and, sponsorship. I said, about 90,000. He goes, wow, that's unbelievable. He said, well, how much do you spend? I said, about 120,000. He goes, what? But then he said the best thing an AD can ever say. He said, it's worth every penny. But now they've cut them back down with the COVID excuse and blah blah blah. They cut their budget down to 70,000. We never had a budget. We just never had a budget because nobody's going to cross me. They just oh, no, we're not messing with Gary Wilson. He knows where the bodies are buried, so we're not doing that.
Yeah. Let me comment on that, Coach, while you're saying it. Couple things. So naming a meet after a person is great. When I was at Cal LA, there was an actor. He was a shot putter, Tommy Tiny Lister. People know him as Debo from Friday, but he wrestled Hulk Hogan as Zeus. Now he was that guy. He wrestled. Yeah. I call him a neighborhood superstar. Everyone in LA knew Debo. So. Yeah. Debo would always complain, oh, no one at Cal LA does anything. And I'm the head coach, and I show up his house one day just for a meet. I said, hey, man, I'm naming the meet after you, the Tiny Lister Classic. And so Debo wasn't as humble as Roy Griak. He was humble, but he goes, oh, Coach, that's great. I'm going to get USC to come. I'm going to get Ron Allis to come. And he'd pull up to the track in his Bentley and park on the track, and he'd give the athlete a meet a diamond watch, and he'd honor somebody like Willie Gauld or he'd honor Ron Allis. But that's just a story. So it's great we can honor a guy, but it made our meet big and made people come around. But more on you, the Griak meet. I remember like pre-nationals was the big meet in cross country and all that, but the Griak meet, after a while, every coach is like, no, that's the meet you got to go to. Like, that's the meet you get your rankings. That's the meet you see all the people now. It got to the point where it's like the Griak was the meet. Yeah. The biggest in-season cross-country meet in the country. So can you talk a little bit more about that? For people who don't know how big it is, just the numbers, the teams.
Well, the teams, well, it's kind of, there's not as many college teams now because they're not, I used to go out and hustle hotel rooms and I'd pay guys, not $1 million, but they $4,000 or $5,000, and free rooms and whatever. But you got to hustle it. And right now they're not. Well, the reason that I just dropped my keys one day and said, okay, the hell with you. Because I said to them, and this is about the whole Griak situation. and I'm not going to belabor it, but in 2016, I went to my boss, Mark Ryan, my assistant boss, and I said, Mark, I said, I'm getting to the age where I'm not going to do this forever, but I want to make sure that this meet continues like it's been. I said, so I want to I made $12,000 a year doing it. And so I said, I want to take 2,000 6 times, hire these 6 people. They know the system, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, no, we're not going to do that. I said, what do you mean you're not going to do that? He said, well, we've got 2 GAs that are going to do the meet now. I said, I said, one's a thrower, nice kid, and one's a pole vaulter. Neither of them have ever been to a cross-country meet in their life. He said, well, that's what we're going to do. I said, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I said, I'll tell you what, here's my keys. And I dropped my keys and I said, that's it. And I walked away and never looked back. I had a whole, in someplace in my office here, I had a Griak manual. It was, I don't know, 150 pages, what to do, when to do it, blah, blah, blah. Never, and then they just started cutting back. When COVID hit, as you know.
Yeah.
Oh, we got COVID.
Yep.
So now it's not the meet that used to be. And Nutty Comb started, other meets started, and then it just kind of went away. But I guess I'm bragging, but as you know, Chris, you and we know thousands of people. And so if you treat them right and you take care of them, they're gonna honor that. The loyalty factor is huge, and the relationship factor. And so that's where that's why it went. But now it's not the same. I mean, high school teams still come, but and some colleges come, but it's not the meets it used to be that way. So
yeah, it sucks when you build something really big and you see it kind of start to crumble, like, because it's relationship it's just keep it going. Hey, just keep it going. Don't, because once it starts to fall apart, it's falling apart fast.
Yeah. You have to, people say to me all the time, they say, well, when do you start working on the next year's GRIAC? I said, the day the GRIAC's over. Well, what do you mean? Yeah. I said, no, you're calling coaches. You go to the convention, you twist arms, you do whatever you need to do to get it going. But it is what it is. I'm, and I'm not bitter about it. I just, I'm almost 77 years old. I got other things to be pissed off about. I'm old. But the GRIAC was, AJ?
Go ahead.
It is what it is.
Any memorable years you had in Minnesota that really stood out to you?
Well, I think the 3rd year I was here with cross country, when we were almost second in the meet. When we went from 9th to 8th to 3rd, and Eileen Donahue, who was a walk-on, she wasn't even a walk-on, she was a walk-in the office.
Those are the best.
She walked in and says, oh, I want to run for you. I said, who are you? I'm Eileen Donahue. I said, what? Well, I'm a sophomore here. I said, well, did you run in high school? Yeah, I ran at Highland Park, right over the river. I said, okay. I said, well, how fast you run? I ran 5:20 in the mile. I'm thinking, oh my freaking God. I said, I got a 5:20 miler in the Division I program. Then she says, oh, I got to go to Ireland and see my dad. So I'll be here for a month. I said, excuse me? Anyway, long story short, she just started to develop and went from okay to, great, obviously. And so that was very memorable. Some of the years, like in the middle 90s, my boss, Chris Voles, that's all I'll say. She always, Kirk Elias was my assistant for 7 or 8 years. Well, when he left and went to Texas Tech, Chris said, you're going to hire a woman. And I went, okay. So it just kept, Angie Taylor was here for 2 years, left. I hired Lonnie Green, the coach at Kentucky now, and close. I mean, he's like my brother. Well, he came in 95 and was married to his first wife, divorced, blah, blah, blah. And then, so he went back to Arkansas. So he was only here a year. He'd be the head coach today if he'd have stayed. But anyway, then I hired Jahan Culbreth last minute. He lasted 2 years. Then Sidney Cartwright lasted about 2 years. It was just like, oh my God. Because these guys, they're sprint coaches, hurdle coaches. They're going, this is not, this is not a good place for me. And so anyway, long story short, there was other ups and downs. Then finally in 2002, I had a new boss, and he said, you can hire whoever you want. And so I put it out in the world, and this is very memorable. I put it out in the world. I called all my buddies. I said, okay, you got 1 month to give me 10 names of who you would hire for this assistant job. And they all produced. They all came in with names, name after name after name after name. And Matt Bingle, who's now the director, came. I said, who the heck's Matt Bingle? And this is a great story. So he was at Eastern Michigan, great recruiter, very low key, but just a worker. And Bob Parks, rest his soul, who was the head coach at Eastern Michigan, was right across the hall because he was the men's coach, and Matt was on the women's staff with Bob Maybauer, who's another crazy man like me. So he was working for Maybauer, and Mike McGuire at Michigan said, "This is the guy. I'm telling you, this guy's good." And I went, yeah, okay. So I brought him in for an interview. Was not that impressed, but Bob Parks, I won't tell you the details of the story, but Bob Parks is being wheeled into an operating room in Michigan to have something with his stomach or something. He calls me on the gurney going to the operating room. Gary, I said, yeah, what are you doing, Bob? I'm telling you, you need to hire Matt Bingle. I said, what? So, and I won't tell you the whole. It's not appropriate for daytime television, but he said, you need to hire him, and that's what tipped it. And he came in, and within 3 or 4 years, we were Big Ten champions, and he's just done a heck of a job. And when I hired him, I said, the person I hired, and nobody knew this, is going to be the next head coach here. And he was. He became I gave him the head track job in 2007. And then when I retired in 2013, he took over as the director, and then now he's the director of both men and women. So done a great job.
Oh, that's a good story, Coach. My most memorable story of Minnesota, besides your great cross country teams, was hate to say this, when you had the 4x4, the two white guys, and I think everybody knows that story. Minnesota did not have a 4x4. Like, this is memorable. I think a lot of Potter. One guy was Potter, and
Mitch Potter, who never worked out, by the way.
You guys got second or won nationals in the relay. Explain that. That was like a movie story. Where did Minnesota come from?
Well, they were. It was Mitch Potter and Adam Steele. Adam Steele won the national title that year in the 400, and Mitch was third, and Phil Lundeen was the coach. Great coach. He's really smart. He plays the buffoon, like, we have a very good team. I don't know what I'm doing. Bull crap. I said, you are. He was awesome. And I was in Europe that next summer, and people came up to me. Hey, Minnesota, Mitch Potter, Adam Steele. I'm going, who the hell are you? Oh, I'm this track fan. I go, what? And you're two white guys. And, everybody loved those guys. I don't care who they were, where they were from, didn't matter. They were, they just loved them because they were, what a story.
Texas, Oregon, USC, Auburn. Where the hell did Minnesota come from with these guys?
And they're Minnesota kids.
That's
They
what I'm
weren't-
talking about. These like you got these kids from land of 10,000 lakes. What?
Exactly. Oh yeah. Yeah, Potter. Yeah, but Potter never freaking worked out.
Wow.
He'd run and our trainer who babied him like crazy. He'd run and then she'd take him right away and take him over to the garbage cans and he'd throw up. I mean, that was his training. It's like, oh my God. But he was a talent. He was just one of those freaks of nature, you know? Yeah. So it was yeah, but yeah, that was at Sacramento.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
You
I
served
think
as- Right.
another memory I have, and this is important, well, it's important to me. Heather Dorniden falling in the 600 at the conference indoor meet in 2009, got tripped up at the 400-meter mark, got up, was 20 or 30 yards behind, meters behind, and ran everybody down and won her heat. She ended up second because it was a 2-heat final, but it's an epic. I mean, it's had millions and millions and millions of views. Heather Dorniden, this Google Heather Dorniden, Big Ten indoor 600, and it'll come up. It's like millions of views. Yeah. So
Awesome.
yeah, that was very, very much. In fact, I'm looking at a picture of her right here. So yeah, she was an awesome kid.
You served as president of the Women's Intercollegiate Cross Country Coaches Association. So talk more about that.
Well, that was interesting. I started on the cross country committee. There's two separate committees at the time, and I think 86, 87, and I kept saying we've got to have more numbers here. There were 16 teams when I first took over in 85. Then it became 22 teams, and you know, a lot of really, really good teams were getting left home. And I said, this is not right in terms of, you know, 64 basketball teams and blah blah blah. So for 10 years, I just worked at it and I went from, I was a vice president for a while, and then I became the president. And the way that it happened is I had a great little staff. Jimmy Bevan was my secretary. Andrew Alden was on my committee to get more numbers. Stan Rosenthal, guys that knew people, and then I ran a really tight ship when it came to. I said, we're not going to come in here and just bitch. We're just going to come in here. I'm the president, and we're going to do it. You got a comment to make? You can make it, but eventually you got to, you know, put something on the table. And I let everybody talk through the whole process for, well, 2 years for sure. People would stand up at convention and say, hey, this is what I think. And I said, okay, you got 3 minutes. This is not like, we're not the Pope. Just, you got 3 freaking minutes. Talk. Then the next person would come up. And we did that for a couple of years. And we went from 22 teams to 31 teams. And we from 100 and some individuals to 252. But as you know, the politics of things don't happen with the coaches. The politics happen with all the athletic directors and people on the committees. Mm-hmm. Lynn King was the AD at Drake at the time, and he was in the track committee, and he said, okay, we can start taking this forward. Well, then it got to the point where it was right there, and Stan Rosenthal, for some reason, he was the coach at South Carolina at the time. He knew a guy who knew Gary Cunningham, who I think was the AD. Gary Cunningham. He was what?
Was he Fresno State?
He might have Fresno State, or
was that Clemson? Maybe that was a different guy.
I think, or it might have been Santa Barbara.
Yes, Santa Barbara. That's where he was.
So Gary Cunningham was with John Wooden's assistant.
Yes.
Gary Cunningham was on the budget committee that decided who was going to get more money for certain things in the NCAA. So I called, and Stan said, well, here's his number. So this is the God's honest truth. July 4th, I called Gary Cunningham, right? I'm sure he's going out surfing or something. I said, hey, this is who I am. He goes, who are you? I said, well, I'm a nobody, but, and we talked about UCLA basketball for a half hour. And I said, well, the reason I'm calling is because I need money for this to get more numbers. And he goes, yeah, we're going through budget process next week. He said, this sounds reasonable. All right. Because softball was getting more numbers. And so we just, but it was because of Andrew Alden, Stan Rosenthal, Jimmy Bevan, just knowing people behind the scenes. And that's how we got it. And we went from eight regions to 9 regions because the Southeast region was so huge. There was like 80 or 90 teams on the line, and it was like, so this is crazy. And we just redistricted everything. And but every coach got their say. Okay, now you're not deciding this. We're all going to decide this. And so when they felt like, okay, he cares about our opinions, but then it went. But then the budget thing made it happen, and it was good. So I was very proud of that, because it's like anything. It takes 10 years to get something done. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're putting somebody on the moon or whatever.
Yeah.
It takes 10 years.
And just a quick comment, because I know we're getting out of time, and I know Alex has one more question or so, but and that's how I know Coach is. I really got to know him was I was on the executive committee, and he'd sit next to me, and you see his comments, I would just be laughing the whole meeting. But those meetings got serious. You talk about a lot of issues. So, but I transitioned from the executive committee, and you're setting proposals to the NCAA, and then Sam seems to convince me to get on the NCAA committee, and that's when you really learn the game, because that's where the decisions are made. And it was real strategic, because you wanted a certain amount of coaches, and you wanted coaches that kind of had clout, and then you wanted administrators that knew the sport, because then you'd have a couple of administrators in the room that didn't know anything, and they just whatever you guys say. So I remember being on a committee, and it was like, we got the numbers increased for indoors and outdoors and new events, but it was, if you could strategically do it and you knew the right people, you can get things pushed through.
Exactly.
During my time, we got a lot of stuff pushed through.
Right. That's right. Exactly right, Chris. Yeah.
2013, you retired from coaching. You've been inducted into 2 Hall of Fames. So how gratifying did that feel?
It was good. I mean, it's fine. It was, I think my youngest son called me. He said, because I think I'm in 6 or 7 Hall of Fames. He said, well, you're really in, I think, so, well, you're in 7 Hall of Fame. I said, but you're really in 8. I said, why 8? He says, well, I won't use the word, but he said, well, you're in the I'm a real jerk Hall of Fame because you were a terrible dad. I said, well, when you have a terrible son, there's a really good chance you could have a terrible dad. So, but he was funny. But it's an honor. I mean, it's great. My wife was so excited when I was inducted into the National Hall of Fame. I said, oh my God. Well, in my speech, I started out with, Susie Wilson was so happy, but she gave me this cleaning glove. In fact, I got it here. So I got this. It says Hall of Fame. Just here. Put this on. So when you're cleaning the furniture, you can say, "Oh, I'm in the Hall of Fame," because you're still taking the garbage out. You're still working around here. You ain't going to get away. Nobody cares that you're in the Hall of Fame. And I said, you're absolutely correct. So, but that, I think the most special thing about any Hall of Fame is that you get a chance to thank the people that really did the work. First of all, a spouse. Secondly, the kids on the team. Good administrators, which are getting to be fewer and far between. But that's the joy of it, is that it's just, I mean, it's obviously an honor, but it's not anything that you start out to, oh, I'm going to be on the Hall of Fame. Well, no. If you got good kids and you don't screw them up too bad, then there's a chance you might do it. So, yeah.
Well, Gary Wilson, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed hearing your story, hearing all your milestones and achievements in your career. And we all shared a lot of good laughs as well on the podcast. So I think the audience will really get a kick out of it and also learn a lot from your experiences. So Gary Wilson, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, AJ.
It was a pleasure, Coach. Any last words?
No, just my biggest advice for young coaches, and I mentor a lot of young coaches, especially females. I said, always keep a file on everybody that you ever have a meeting with. Okay. Understand that kids are kids. Well, I want to coach Division I. I said, oh, you want to go out with a stopwatch, right? Yeah. I said, I got news for you. This is the way the game is played. This is what you got to go through. And who you work for is a lot more important than where you're at. I said, I can send you to a lot of places that, you know, they got a great football team and there's palm trees and blah, blah, blah. But if you got a jerk for a boss, it's going to be miserable. And when you get a job, make sure that you're not looking for another job the first day you're on your job.
Mhm.
Well, I'm just stopping through. I had a guy once that I won't tell you where or who, but I had a guy, I helped him get a job at a school. And the second day he was there, he calls me, he says, this is a terrible place. I said, excuse me? I said, you've been there 2 days. Well, I got to get out of here. I said, let me tell you something, young man. I busted my butt to help you get this job.
Mm-hmm.
You
asked for this.
You asked for it. And you're the one that's got to make it good. I said, Villanova had great track teams back in the day, and Jumbo Elliott had no track. He had nothing, but he had great kids and he worked his butt off. I said, stop. I said, either go in and work, or, you know, if you want to hold a stopwatch, go out and hold a stopwatch. But you're not going to you're not a manager, a coach, whatever, a promoter, whatever. So, yeah.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Hope to see you on the road someplace.